lot about safety, and so I'm honored to be here. I want to give a huge round of applause to Sue Westerman. If we could give her a huge round of applause. And thank you to the Kenwood, East Isles, and Lowry Hill neighborhoods as well. You know, so many of the most difficult issues we face, they require you getting involved at the very micro level. And there's no way that I or any council member could get that deeply involved on the specifics. Neighborhood associations do that. You all do that. And so getting this kind of direct feedback and being able to provide information directly to you is of critical importance. I am not going to waste your time with any sort of campaign stump speech or any long-winded bit of information that you've probably already heard before. I want to jump right into some of the very important issues specifically as they apply to safety. Is that okay? All right, so if I don't talk about a whole bunch of other things, it's not because I don't care about those other things. That's because the topic of tonight is safety. So, we have a long way to go. We are making good progress, but we have a long way to go. The fact that crime is down does not mean that we're washing our hands clean and we're moving on to the next topic. There is no more important issue that we face as a local government and that I work on as mayor than safety. Both the perception of and the reality of safety. There are instances where the reality meets the perceptions, and there are times when it doesn't. So I want to give you some statistics, just to, maybe this will set your mind at ease, maybe it'll frustrate you, but I want you to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown of where things are going and where we've come from. So 2018 and 2019, pre-COVID, were two of our very best years ever on record. The latter half of 2020, 2021, and a good portion of 2022 were very bad years. Crime in basically every category went up drastically. But due to a lot of work of a lot of very hard-working people, including police officers, violence interrupters, both safety and safety beyond policing, we have managed to drive down crime quite significantly. And I'm talking about a 24% reduction in gunshot victims, a 20% reduction in robberies. Sex crimes are down right now. Also, shot spotter activations are also about 29% down. Now that's down over a couple of really tough years. We need to get back to where we were in 2018, 2019, and then drive crime even further down from there. And it's going to take, that's right. And it's going to take a collective effort. It's going to take the work of our new commissioner in Todd Barnett, who I support 100%. He's the former Chief Justice of the Hennepin County Courts. He's someone that understands what a comprehensive approach looks like. And for years, he's had a vantage point looking at the criminal justice system from about as high up as you could possibly get. He knows where the gaps are. He knows where to fill in. He's also an extraordinary manager. Our Chief of Police, in Brian O'Hara, who tragically had a good friend who's having some major concerns. I won't go into it more than that. Wasn't able to be here tonight. But he cares deeply and is doing an incredible job with our police department. Our police officers, many of whom are here with us, are working tirelessly, very short-staffed. And I'll give you the real numbers here because you deserve just to hear the blunt truth. We have fewer officers per capita than just about any major city in the entire country. It's a problem. Does that mean that I'm saying that police officers are the only solution to dealing with safety concerns? No, that is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that we have very tragic and at times violent instances in major cities throughout America that do require someone that is able to respond to a 911 call, address someone's concerns in some of their most difficult situations in life, and oftentimes those situations are dangerous. So I appreciate their work. I'm someone that knows how hard that these officers are working, and yes, they do deserve a lot of credit, because especially these officers that have stuck around over these last couple of years. officers, these officers that have stuck around when there has been this massive attrition, we appreciate that. And we appreciate the work that they're doing. And by the way, they are committed to the kind of culture shift that we do need, and I do stand by in this Minneapolis Police Department. We need safety, we need reform. We need safety and we need reform. And those issues are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they're intrinsically linked. And Assistant Chief Blackwell knows that inherently. Inspector Nelson knows that inherently. And the work that is happening, whether it's through a Department of Justice consent decree, or it's through the police contract negotiations that are underway, or the work that our chief is affirmatively driving each and every day, it's happening. Change is afoot. And part of that is safety as well. Now, knowing that our numbers are as low as they are, what it requires us to do is, one, have a very multi-jurisdictional approach where we're collaborating, not just internally, but externally. It requires that we're working alongside with the Park Police, and thank you, Chief, for being here. It requires us that we work with the Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies, and a mutual aid approach where we're working with other jurisdictions even outside and beyond Minneapolis as well. It requires that we work with the state, and specifically the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. We have received a number of very important investigators from them. These are investigators and detectives that are helping us to look at some of these crimes so that we're able not just to respond to them after it happens. That doesn't do people enough good, right? I mean, if you're telling me that your whole approach to crime is to respond to a bad incident after it happens, that's not good enough. This helps them to suss out these important details before they take place, make sure both that we've got preventative measures that are underway and we're able to hold violent offenders accountable. It has to be that multi-pronged approach. And we're doing the important work as well within our city to provide what I call a comprehensive approach to safety. What that comprehensive approach has looked like is we heard loud calls, and we pushed for, both during a campaign and after, an Office of Community Safety. We've now set it up. Through this Office of Community Safety, we have a commissioner that heads up the whole thing and manages the different departments. And underneath that, you've got 5 different departments, including police, fire, 911, emergency management, and violence prevention. And when you have those 5 different departments that are working together on a consistent basis, not tangentially, but I mean directly working with each other, you're able to truly get a recipe that I think cities around the country are looking for. Cities around the country are looking to set up the thing that we have underway right now that we're working towards. And the work is ongoing. We are definitely not there yet. And we also recognize that the work also changes based on the season, and you got to plan ahead. We all know that issues pop up over the summertime. I've heard from many of you that you had concerns about things like the 4th of July, making sure that there's a plan in place and that we're ready to go when a holiday that happens, I think, every single year, am I right? That we're ready to go. And whether there's an instance that happens over at Bloom Island or around the lakes, we want to make sure that we're set and ready to go with the right individuals ready to respond to any sort of incidents as they happen. And we've also got additional work that we're going to be lobbying for over at the state legislature. As I mentioned, one of the pieces is we are limited with the number of cops that we have. So we're doing a few things. One, we're offloading some of that work to other departments within our city. You know, cops have an incredible technical skill, but they're not trained in on everything. And so we've got mental health responders, behavioral crisis unit that can now respond. If we push for this in the budget, we will be able to respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in all 5 precincts. It's something that we funded and something that we've expanded, and it now has ongoing funding as well. We want to make sure that violence interrupters, people that are charged with sussing out some of these problematic instances before they get started, also have the tools to succeed. And we also need to be recruiting more police officers to get up and improve the ranks that we presently have. So how do we do that? A few ways. One, we need to understand the complexity of the job and the kind of people that would be really good at the job. And for those that already have some of those skill sets baked in, we need to find a way to expedite the process so that they can more quickly become police officers. I'll give you an example. A corrections officer, someone who works in a jail, who's able to de-escalate really complex, difficult situations verbally without even using a gun. This kind of person would really be an excellent police officer. However, this kind of person, even with all of their existing credentials, would still have to go back to multiple years worth of school, go through training academies that they may or may not already have skills in before they become a police officer. And so we're finding ways so that we can expedite this process, and so that some young person, or old person for that matter, on the north side or on the south side, who's saying, I want to be the change in this department, I want to protect and serve my community, I want to do my part for this city, they're able to become a police officer, and they don't need to wait years and years and years to make it happen. By the way, the credentials that we've got set up, they are more. They are longer. It takes a longer time than in other states. So we want to have a way to fill those ranks up. We're also doing our part directly at the city, making sure that we've got this recruitment campaign underway. I'll tell you, I was disappointed that we couldn't get the necessary votes on the city council to get through the necessary incentive bonuses. That's important. Officers have got a tough job. We need to be holding them accountable, and at the same time, we need to pay them for the difficult job that they are doing. And so that wasn't able to get through. That being said, we are also negotiating through a union contract. One that I've said many times before, and so I'll tell you again, needs to have both important reforms in it and a necessary pay raise. Both of those things are critical, and we're going to be fighting for it. And beyond that, we need to make sure that we're getting the word out about these job openings that exist and that we need to fill, and make sure that we're recruiting the specific kind of people that we're looking for. I want more officers in Minneapolis, and I want more officers that have a deep connection with this community in our city. And whether that's someone who's volunteered at a homeless shelter, or has some sort of social service background, or someone who's coaching Little League. These are direct connections to the city that, yes, help with safety. And so what you'll see over the next several months is us going out with a full-on recruitment campaign. You'll see the work that we're doing, whether it's on the TV or the radio or billboards. We haven't worked out the exact strategy yet. I'm going to leave that to the experts. But we want to make sure that people know about those openings. We're sending the right message out to get the people in that we want. And that we're able to first retain the officers that we have and then fill the ranks. So all of this is of critical importance if we are truly going to get the job done. The final thing that I'll talk about briefly is just the use of technology. We live in a 21st century world. We've got to have a 21st century police department. We've got to have a 21st century safety system. And that means that, yes, technology is part of it. And so we've got a full plan, some of it executed, some of it underway, where we are going to want to work directly with private businesses to make sure that cameras are accessed so that we're able to investigate earlier. We want to have a point person that we're able to call when a crime takes place so that we can quickly solve some of these crimes and hold perpetrators of them accountable. And we need to offset some of the workload of officers so that they're able to tend to some of the most difficult circumstances. One area, which I think we can do a lot of improvement on, is just traffic enforcement. I mean, how many of you have seen a lot of speeding going on around your neighborhood? Not okay. I don't think anybody wants to see that. It's dangerous for people, it's dangerous for kids, and we should be able to enforce the law around it. Now, truthfully, we don't have enough officers to be able to enforce that the way we would like. You know another answer to do that, or how you can do it, especially on speeding, or for instance, driving through a red light? Camera. To do that, we need a change in law from the state legislature. Presently, as it sits, we're not able to mount those cameras on a stoplight to have a violation sent, perhaps in the mail. Maybe you can do it electronically now. to the individual that went through the red light. And this would be a very objective thing. You go through the red light, you get a ticket. I'm for that. And so we're going to be working to get these necessary changes through the state legislature. We're going to be doing our part to, again, improve safety, to change the culture, and to push ahead in a way that I know we can get this kind of safety that we need for everybody. And, with that, I don't know if I'm passing. Oh, I've got our council member here. We've got our assistant chief here. We've got a whole crew here, guys. So, I'll just end by saying thank you. Thank you for your attendance tonight. It shows you care deeply. Thank you for your work on your neighborhood association. Thank you for the feedback you get. Good, bad, or ugly, I'll tell you, feedback is helpful. It's helpful to hear from people because you get a sense of what's happening on the ground and where we need to be improving. And so, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's keep the partnership going. Thank you so much. Okay, there's two questions here that I will answer. Neither one of them are easy. I'll ask it and then answer it. So the first one is, what is the timeline for meeting the charter requirements for peace officers, for police officers? Timing. Almost got me out of that. So we are significantly below what the mandatory minimum is in the charter. We need to stop the hemorrhaging. We need to maintain and retain our existing police officers. They're working their tails off. And yes, we do need to increase the ranks through additional recruitment. There's a number of different ways that we need to do that. I've mentioned the campaign. I've mentioned getting the word out. I've mentioned the importance of paying officers for this very difficult job. All of that needs to take place. And I will give you the really honest truth, which is that the pipeline of people that are presently entering the career of law enforcement is dramatically down. That's not just a Minneapolis thing, that is a nationwide issue. It is our job, which is why it's so important to pay people for doing this really hard job. And so I could give you a date, and it will probably be wrong. I could give you a date when we'll be back up at the numbers that we need, but it will probably be inaccurate. And so rather than do that, I laid out a plan to get where we need to be. Look, I'm a mayor and we deal in the reality business. And the reality business is that, yes, police officers are a very important part of this equation. They are not the only part. And so we're going to be working on the issues that I mentioned earlier. The second thing, it says, should legislation be introduced that would penalize parents of those children under 17 who vandalize automobiles? No. So we have an issue right now where the people that are not just vandalizing, but at times jacking cars, are significantly younger and younger. I mean, when I was 14 years old, I would have been terrified to get behind the wheel because I didn't have a license. Now we have 14-year-olds and even people that are younger stealing cars on a far too routine basis. And I think there's been some discussion already about some of the car theft. And by the way, car theft is different from a carjacking. I hope people know we have managed to decrease the number of carjackings, depending on the month, but most of the time, very significantly down. Car thefts, however, are largely still up. About 50%, and please, Assistant Chief Inspector, correct me if I'm wrong on this percentage, but last time I looked, somewhere around 50% of the cars that were stolen were either Kias or Hondas. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but if I were to go right out to the street and track the cars that are passing I guarantee that 50% of the cars on the road are not Kias and Hondas. And so, of course, one of the reasons for it is the technology that is used or is not used in these vehicles. We've been partnering to make sure that there are some significant improvements made to these. And we need a more whole-scale system statewide that is working on youth violence prevention. One of the most tragic calls, I've gotten a series of these that I've received as mayor, is a call from a parent pleading with me to arrest her son because she is not able to deal with the issue in full, and she's worried that because of the violent things that he's doing, and because of the cars that he's jacking, etc., he's likely to get killed himself, and she's also worried about what he might do. You can't put a 13-year-old in jail. Nobody wants to do that. But we do need care for them. We do need to give a route through which we can protect both them as well as the people that are the victims of these, at times, really violent crimes. That shouldn't be a controversial thing to say. It's important. And you need a system in place. You need a place in place that can do this in a really whole-scale manner. I think it's got to be a collaboration, as is always the case, between cities and counties and states. It's got to be a collaboration between social service providers and law enforcement. But this is not an option. We got to get it done. Are there any other questions that I have?
I think you really answered them all. A lot of the questions from the audience and from our neighbors is all about police retention, recruitment, pay raises, and I think you addressed that.
These are the things, I mean, these are some of the many things that keep me up each night.
I bet. It keeps us up.
Yeah, none of these issues are easy, but I'll tell you, I am optimistic. We got the right people in place. For the first time, we've got this new government structure, as of a month ago, is finally built out, in that we've got a city operations officer, a COO, in Margaret Anderson Kelleher, who's a real talent. We've got a commissioner in Commissioner Todd Barnett, who is an exceptional talent himself. We've got the best attorney coming out of the state of Minnesota, the government, in Christie Anderson. And we've got a great team throughout City Hall that's really rearing to go. And so you're part of that. Just as an example of how important you are, just yesterday we got to announce the record number of potholes that were filled. This last year, we had 9,359 complaints about potholes, about a pothole. Probably more complaints because there were several complaints about the same pothole. But 9,359 different potholes that you all and other people in the city complained about, properly complained about. You called in, you told 311 what the deal was, you let us know where they were, and of those 9,359 potholes, guess how many of them were filled? 9,359. And so we're a team. We're a team along with you, and we're so appreciative of the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Cashman, I use she, her pronouns. I'm the newly elected Ward 7 City Council member. So I was sworn in about 3 weeks ago, and it's not easy to adjust to a new council member after we've had such incredible leadership from Councilmember Lisa Goodman for 26 years. So just want to appreciate her, acknowledge her incredible work for our community for almost my entire lifetime. So let's give a shout out to Lisa. Here is sent her a kind message. So I want to thank all the organizers, especially Sue, for reaching out to me so early about this event, and to the safety leaders at East Isles, Cedar Isles, Dean, Kenwood, and Lowry Hill for working together so closely and in coordination on safety issues. So it just means makes all the difference to be in communication with one another, to be sending text messages, to be sending emails on issues that are coming up in the neighborhood. So I'm also really grateful for Inspector Nelson and the great chats we've been able to have so far, as I'm new to my position and she's new to her position as well, so really appreciate that. So I would say my number one priority as a council member is to ensure safety of all of our residents in Ward 7, as well as workers in Ward 7 and visitors to Ward 7, because that's what makes Minneapolis a top place to live, a top place to work, a top place to visit. So that's why, this is obviously a priority for a community that is shown by how many people are here tonight. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to work on day one as a new council member tackling this issue. So tonight I'm just going to talk about what I've been doing the past few weeks. So one, the ride-alongs I've been doing with police officers, and then the independent evaluator for overseeing the consent decree and what's going on there. Update on police contract negotiations. Mayor already touched on that, and perhaps our assistant chief will speak to that as well. And then community safety models in downtown and uptown. So since being sworn in earlier this month, I have attended 2 ride-alongs with our Precinct 5 and Precinct 1 police officers. So in Precinct 5, which covers uptown and where we are now, I spent a frigid Friday night with Inspector Lindsay, or Officer Lindsay, who is wonderful, and we had a great time together. I was with her for 6 hours and accompanying her to calls throughout the ward, because I think it's really important for a policymaker to understand at least a little bit what the job of a police officer is like. So just a kind of recap of what I saw that night, we attended 7 911 calls. Every single one of them was in Ward 10 and not Ward 7. I will mention that because I kept, wondering, are we going to get a call that's this west side of Hennepin Avenue, but all the calls that we attended were east of Hennepin Avenue. We attended to 2 domestic violence threats. We attended to 2 welfare checks of people who were sleeping out in the cold. We attended to 2 stolen vehicles. I'm sorry, should I speak up? Thank you. We attended to 2 stolen vehicle situations, one which we couldn't pursue, and the other which was an abandoned vehicle that we then called the tow service to come pick up, and that she filed a report on that. And the last issue that we attended to was more of a fight that was taking place in a home where she was able to go in and de-escalate and to remove someone from the house. So I just give you this as examples of the kind of calls that I saw that night. Was it Wednesday, I did a ride-along with the police at Precinct 1. So that's Inspector Billy Peterson in the downtown area. And we're also accompanied by Shane, who runs the safety program for the Downtown Improvement District. And I must be a crime prevention good luck charm because we didn't have any calls, and it's actually been a record-breaking week for downtown with very, very few crimes downtown. That is, I think, the product of a lot of investment in safety downtown. With the Downtown Improvement District, they have 80 ambassadors who are hired by a vendor called Block by Block, and they do a lot of upkeep on the streets. They help guide people to transit stops, and they also take care of cases of someone who needs mental health support or who needs to be accompanied to a safer housing location. So I do think that, downtown with the Downtown Improvement District does have more resources than what we see in uptown. We visited some of the hotspots in downtown where there are larger cases of crime, so that includes the US Bank Stadium area, the light rail stations, Loring Park, which is near where I live, and then also Elliott Park. So just understanding what different agencies are doing in specific blocks of our city to ensure safety. And I know that Loring Park is actually an incredible case study of safety improvements. So I think we have our park police and others to thank for that. And maybe if our park police chief is going to speak, it would be great to hear about that. And I will also mention that downtown placemaking has a big role to play in creating safety downtown. So the greening of the space, removing graffiti, cleaning up the street, literally having trash cans where people can put things in. It creates an environment that doesn't allow people to behave poorly. And in contrast to that, I did a safety walk with a neighbor in Uptown yesterday, and I think that is not necessarily the case along Hennepin Avenue. There are a lot of areas along Hennepin Avenue that have trash, that have sidewalks that need maintenance, that have graffiti, that there's maybe drug paraphernalia lying around, and that all attracts unsafe behavior and this sense that this is not a safe place for me to walk. You know, whether you're a woman walking home from the bar or you're a family with children in a stroller. So those are the kinds of experiences of neighbors that are really important for me to hear. And I just appreciate everyone's communication in these past few weeks about their specific instances of safety and experiences of crime here in our ward. So about the independent evaluator to the consent decree with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, there are 3 organizations who have come forward as potential independent evaluator groups. Their names are ALIFA, which is an acronym that I will not be able to spell out. Second is Jensen Hughes, and the third is Relman Colfax. So these 3 organizations gave presentations to the community. One was at the Plymouth Congressional Church, which is in Ward 7, and another at the University of Minnesota. And they are now working with our city attorney as well as the Minnesota Department of Human Rights and the Federal Department of Justice to select an independent evaluator. This group will make sure that the consent decree is being implemented, that they're following through on it. So I think it's important for the community to have a voice in who is selected as the independent evaluator. And I've been hearing from some community members about who they prefer and what their perspective on that is. It's really important to have a group overseeing the consent decree that has experience of doing this in other cities around the country and who is really committed to a community engagement process and bringing people along. Because I know police reform and implementation of the consent decree is really important to us as a city. You know, we will be paying for the implementation of the consent decree, so we want it to be implemented as soon as possible and in a good way. I think in the coming weeks, our city attorney and the other stakeholders will put forward a recommendation on who that evaluator will be, and the city council will have an opportunity to weigh in on it at the council and take a vote on it. The third thing I wanted to speak about is police contract negotiations. So many have heard now that that has moved into mediation, that there will be mediation in February of our police contract. And what I heard from Inspector Billy Peterson in the 1st Precinct downtown, that having a good police contract is the #1 way for us to attract, retain, recruit and retain police officers to our city. So it's really important that the police contract is able to honor the work of police officers, that it's an attractive job opportunity, and so that's a really important process for our city. And I will say, I think that after the contract gets negotiated in February, that the council will then vote on it as well. So these are a few things for you to stay tuned, you know, to in the coming months as far as what the city council's role is. So the last thing I'll talk about is community safety models. And I actually invited our chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee here. So that's Councilmember Jason Chavez. He's back there with the black vest on, and he represents Ward 9. So as chair of that committee, he's putting together a work plan for the committee. Same way that I'm doing as the chair of the Climate and Infrastructure Committee for our city. Putting together a work plan for the next couple of years is what is the council going to tackle together with staff. And the council member asked me to give input into that work plan. And so it's really important for me this weekend, because on Monday we'll be doing that. It's important for me this weekend to use input from this event and from all of the thousands of emails and calls I've received over the last couple of weeks, and to channel that input into what are my recommendations for our public health and safety work plan for the city. Last year in the budget for 2024, the council and the mayor approved a community safety pilot program, which is buckets of money, $300,000 each, that community can develop a community safety pilot. And I will be working on a pilot for the Uptown area. This has to be a community effort, so I want to be working with the public safety leaders at Uptown neighborhood associations like the East Isles Neighborhood Association to put forward a proposal where we can bring some training, safety ambassadors, and other strategies to the community for upkeep of the public space, for maybe security officers at the businesses along Hennepin Avenue. It could be, support for cleaning the transit stations and maintaining, a quality of behavior in our public spaces. And that's another thing that you can weigh in on in the coming weeks as we start to put that together. We'll be waiting for our Office of Community Safety to put out an RFP, and at that point, community groups can apply for that funding. So as council member and as a representative of this area, it's my job to steward those conversations and to represent neighbors as those conversations take place. The last thing is there are monthly meetings about the Uptown Transit Station. So this is on Hennepin Avenue and 28th. These monthly meetings, one took place 2 weeks ago and we were there as a team, is a way to coordinate with different safety jurisdictions like Metro Transit and Met Council on what are we doing around transit areas for improved safety, especially at that station. There have been a lot of instances of crime. So that's another opportunity for folks to engage if there are specific issues happening at that station that you can communicate with me in my office about and we can work on in that group. So just some next steps. This weekend, I know everybody was familiar with the Lunch with Lisa model, that she had a lunch at the St. Thomas building downtown once a month, and instead of lunch we'll be doing coffee with Katie, and the first coffee will be this Sunday at Isles Bun and Coffee on 28th in Hennepin. I'll be there from 10 to 11:30, and the focus of this kind of open office hours is to receive input around safety that I can bring to the public health and safety work plan on Monday. So hope to see some of you there if you want to talk further. And I think before I take questions, yeah.
This is a big issue.
Okay. What's your relationship with the police, and do you support defunding the police? I would say that at this point that I have a good relationship with police, with the officers that I've been able to meet throughout the last, while I was campaigning, and now once I've been in office. So Inspector Nelson, Assistant Chief Blackwell, Inspector Peterson downtown. I've met some other great officers downtown. Officer Lindsay, who I did a ride along with, is just amazing. She comes from the military and she calls herself an adult cop because she's 36, and she came from the military, so she has, I think, 18 years of experience in safety, and I think she's just great. I mean, the way that she was supporting the women experiencing domestic violence threats that we attended to that night was impressive. I mean, she really left them with a sense of, we're here for you, we're taking care of you, you're not alone in your experience. She gave them opportunities to file reports and to keep themselves safe in the future. And I asked her, like, how do you deal with the emotional labor? And she said, you know, this is my job. Like, I got into this to protect people. And so I just want to shout her out because I really learned a lot from her that night.
Answer the question.
Yeah.
Do you support defunding the police?
No, I don't support defunding the police. Council will be fully funding our police department and making sure that they can pass an aggressive strategy with their police union contract to be able to attract officers to our city. Okay, the second question was a big issue for East Isles. Does the city have any impact on the type of businesses that are going into Uptown? For example, the YWCA site. Yes, actually, there's a role for council members in helping to broker deals and to help people get the financing and support for investing in vacant buildings. So for the YWCA site in particular, there's an incredible nonprofit that now has an agreement out in working on a contract to buy that site. And they're looking for funding from the county, from the city, and from the state to fund their project. So I'll be supporting their efforts and potentially writing a letter in support through our Intergovernmental Relations Committee to be asking the state and the legislature this year to fund their project, because it's really important that we have a really positive community space and a positive community organization coming into that site. That's so important for East Isles. And I guess before I turn it over, I think I should address the ceasefire resolution that the City Council passed this week. So we do have a lot of community members here who are grieving over the loss of life in Israel and Palestine in the past few months. And while of course, foreign policy is not within the purview of the Minneapolis City Council, foreign policy is not the purview of the City Council. That being said, there are a lot of people impacted by this war, and we are also contributing to the war through our tax dollars. And I did hear from over 500 constituents about the ceasefire resolution, both for and against. And in the end, I voted to support the ceasefire resolution because I believe that it's very powerful for us to stand up for peace, to stand up for where our tax money is being spent, and to be committed, absolutely committed in our community to addressing and ending anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And so I invite everyone to communicate with me about their experiences that are being compounded by a conflict across the world. And that is our commitment as local officials, is to make sure that our community is safe. So, thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I can't walk around, that's a bummer for me. So I am Katie Blackwell, and I'm the Assistant Chief of Operations. great being back in the 5th Precinct. I feel like this is home for me. I was here for a few years, and I know that Inspector Nelson's doing wonderful things here. As Assistant Chief of Operations, I make sure the department's running smoothly, and I try to make Chief O'Hara very happy by doing that. So, and I work a lot with community, but I directly oversee patrol and investigations, and then I work with my partner, Assistant Chief Chris Gators, in Community Trust, and so with training, implementation unit, and the internal affairs unit. And Chief O'Hara really wanted me to express tonight that he couldn't be here. He really wanted to. He is at a funeral of a close friend of his, but he really truly wanted to be here. And if there was questions that weren't answered, for sure we will make sure I work with Sue and get back to anybody that has questions. So there was a couple questions early on that was asked of the mayor, and I just want to make sure that you understood. And I do want to say first, thanks for joining us tonight on one of the warmest days of the year. I was confused at the date when I was coming here, I'm not kidding. So, all right, so being a police officer, people often ask how long does it take? And it could take up to 5 years from beginning to end, right? When you go through a 2-year school in law enforcement in Minnesota, which that requires you to go through, you have to get through police skills, which is law theory, hands-on, quite a few, all the laws of the state, right? And then once you get through that, you have to take a post-peace officer standards training licensing test, and you have to pass that. To come on the Minneapolis Police Department, just like the Park Police, they have to go through about a 4-month police academy. If they pass that, they have to get through 6 months of field training. If they pass that, they still have to get through another 6 months of probation. So there's a lot of checks and balances along that way, and it's a long road. So with that, we are constantly focused on recruitment efforts. And I do want to go back, there was a question I want to get to, but I was going to talk about it anyway. So it's where we're at as a department. I'm going to talk about bigger picture as a department, and then Inspector Nelson's going to talk about more of the 5th Precinct, what she's doing, her efforts, her officers are doing. So as a department, back in 2019, Chief Rondo asked for 400 more police officers, and at the time, we were right around 900 police officers. And the reason why he was asking for more police officers is that investigations became very complex. Technology advancements, things that we're taking an extensive amount of resources and time towards investigations, between surveillance and more just all the technology that investigators had to look through, whether it was body-worn camera and all those different platforms. So, flash forward to today, we're down to about 570 police officers. And if I had to call everybody back to duty today, if I took out those that are on leave, we're at about 512 officers. We have 131 officers that can do early retirement this year. So that's challenging for us, and it's concerning. So when we talk about the money, it is a big thing. We want to be in the top 10. We want to compete with our neighboring agencies out there. And so for us, to be strategic, this is the time when we have to be the most strategic, collaborating with our partners and figuring out how we're doing things. We have collapsed and modified units because our #1 focus is public safety and reducing gun violence. And that is our biggest effort right now in the city, next to following MDHR requirements, next to making sure that we're getting our training done and that we're taking care of our officers' health and wellness, and on top of working with our community members to continue to build that trust back, right? So with that, part of that strategy, we had to pull a lot from specialty units or modify units to take investigators certain days of the month, make sure they're out there doing guardian beats, making sure that some of our specialty units that we pull them out and they start answering 911 calls when they're not doing their primary assignments. And then we just created the Southside React team. In the past, we had community response teams. We haven't had one for several years in the Southside. And we really wanted more ownership on the Southside 3rd and 5th Precinct to do these react teams to focus on that gun violence and other challenges that they were facing. So investigations is currently about 50% down investigators. So it's a challenge for our investigators. So we rely heavily still on our partners that we work with every day, ATF, FBI, BCA, and we have they're civilian investigators, but they don't take over the role of investigators, but they help tremendously with going through the body-worn camera tapes, with going through surveillance and the thousands of pages of documents you might get in different platforms. So that's a significant thing that we're trying to do. I'm going to answer some of the questions here so it says, what are the next steps for the MPD to ensure that you are ready to comply with the settlement agreement And what is the most meaningful thing the MPD has done to comply so far? That is a great question, and I don't know who wrote this, but you have beautiful handwriting. So the biggest thing for us is that we've done is, we're working on is getting that monitor in place. But Chief O'Hara has experience in consent decrees and our settlement agreement, and he is full speed ahead on implementing policies, even though we don't have a monitor just yet. We're doing a lot of training. We just looked at the 2024 training schedule, and our training commander did a really good job trying to figure out how we're going to do all this additional training, because we have post mandates, the peace officer standard of training mandates that we have to comply with, that every law enforcement officer in Minnesota, if you don't get it done, your license gets suspended until you get it done. So it's very important we meet that objective. And then we have the MDHR requirements, which says we have to do 156 hours. So what we did was, we can't get through the amount of training that we need to this year and be in compliance with the MDHR requirements due to staffing. But they're actually working with us really closely and understand that we're going to get through the majority of what we need to get done, and we give them a plan for 2025. So that's realistically with the staffing levels, because they're number one priorities on the street. So that's one of the biggest things that we're doing. And then also just the community listening sessions. They've got a lot of community listening sessions out there, and then also officer listening sessions. So we're taking those assessments. We're actually getting a briefing on that by Commander Wilkes, who's in charge of implementation unit, next week. And then we're going to come up with a plan, because those assessments were facility assessments, technology assessments, training assessments, and there was 5 big pillars that we're going to assess and figure out where we've got to comply with. Some are you got to do it in 30 days, some are you got to do it in 60 days. So we need to stay on top of a lot of those things. And then, what is the safety plan to the LRT, the light rail stations in our neighborhood? So Metro Transit's in charge of light rail, but we work closely hand in hand, just like we do Park Police, with Chief Ohotto, and just because that's their area, we still back each other up, and we still collaborate a lot. And I would suggest maybe at the next meeting we bring Metro Transit in, but that could probably answer more to the light rail platform, but we will back them up where needed. And I think that was the last question. I just want to introduce, he loves it when I do this, Officer Nick Davids. Can you raise your hand? He doesn't love it when I do that, but he is one of our great good precinct police officers. Nick is very compassionate about being a 5th Precinct police officer and being a Minneapolis police officer. He's so engaged, always wants to come to community meetings and be embedded in the community. If you ever see him out there, please shake his hand, say hi, because he cares very much. With that, great to see all of you. Eileen, thank you for doing everything you're doing in our communities. You just been wonderful. Over now to the 5th Precinct Inspector, Christie Nelson.
Hi, I'm Christie Nelson. Thank you, AC. And thank you all for coming. Thank you, Lori, Sue, Marty, Eileen, for everything that you've done to get the word out and sharing your Friday night with me. Oh, you can't move with this. Okay. Okay, so back by popular demand, the talk from last week at the 5. So it's right there, but maybe we can dim the lights a little bit in the front. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start with a big overview of the citywide of our crime stats and metrics. Okay, next slide. So if you look at here, we've got this is really the gun violence thing, starting with the homicides. The gun violence index does include the sum of shootings, shot spotter activations, and people with a gun and sound of shots fired, 911 calls that are coming in. Now granted, this is a little old by about a week. But most importantly, you're seeing the trend of everything is coming down citywide. Shot spotter technology, we get asked a little bit in the precincts. We do not have that in the 5th precinct. It's primarily a technology that is used in precinct 3 and precinct 4. Next slide. I don't know if you can see this, but property crime year to date, it's somewhat consistent from last year. Burglary is nearly even, destruction of property is up 10%, and what that is damage to property. So if somebody breaks into your house, your door gets damaged, your window gets damaged. If somebody breaks into your car, again, your door gets damaged, the window gets damaged. So that's where those numbers are coming from. And auto theft is coming down 16%, down 18% in the last 28 days. Again, the metric is from January 15th. And I'll get to auto theft here in a little bit. So next slide, please. Okay, shootings. This is kind of the concentration of where gun violence is in the city of Minneapolis. For us, you can see the lakes. What's significant here is that orange blob is the intensity of the color is the intensity of the crime. So what we're seeing, what we saw earlier in 23 is what we're seeing now is that orange blob is light orange, maybe a peach instead of a dark, dark orange. So that is good that it is dissipating and decreasing. Next slide. Auto thefts. Okay, I know this is a little hard to see, but there are little numbers on the bottom that correspond to years and weeks in the year. So the blue line is Kias and Hyundais. And as you can see in that bottom slide, the orange is everything else. So with that TikTok challenge that came out of, I believe, Milwaukee, Midwestern city, so we kind of were affected by that greatly, as you can see what that is on that far right corner on the bottom. What is unique around week 40-something in 2023, Hyundai hosted a clinic here that was held at Kmart where you could come in and get an upgrade to your car just to get it more secure, and then everybody was receiving a steering wheel lock or club mechanism. So we are watching those numbers intensely with the vertical marker of the Hyundai thing. And I'm so sorry, it's kind of echoey. Wait, one way? Okay, here we go. Next slide. So this is kind of what we talk about in our weekly meetings with the chief. So we'll go with the next slide. I'd like to highlight some good work. We talked about property crime. A unique thing that was happening was copper thefts along the city lights. And you probably noticed it when you drive around. Officer Butler saw a vehicle of matching description that he heard about in roll call, stopped it, and ultimately an arrest was made. And inside the vehicle were spools and spools and spools of stolen copper. It's impactful to neighborhoods because the lights get dim, and it's impactful because the copper is expensive. So in response to that, the city is also switching over to aluminum wiring, which is not so attractive to copper thieves, and it doesn't cost as much either. So really great arrest by one of our officers on Middle Watch. Next slide. Okay. It's kind of hard to see, but our officers enjoy kind of talking around and hanging out with the community, and this is an example of them over at Carmel Mall, just kind of saying hi and sharing smiles. So we like to see that, community engagement. So next slide. And then these are things that we talk about, that we're seeing trends and how we are going to address them. So we talked about the copper, there was that arrest, and we have seen a decrease in copper thieving in the precinct after that arrest. And then we've got a location, a nightclub that we've had some concerns with, and we have been in conversations with business licensing and how better to support that business. And to remind them of, the rules of having a late night kind of establishment. So next slide. Okay, so kind of starting to get in the weeds. So what we also watch statistically is different things in the precinct, and what we saw is in the northwest part of the precinct is we're seeing purse robberies. So we are like, okay, you guys, the AC said we've got these additional cops coming to help us out with these guardian beats. we at the precinct say, hey, you know what, we're seeing this trend, can you focus some time and some energy with directed patrols, answering calls up there just to have more visible presence, and to stop by at businesses, to say hi, just so they can see you out there. So, the additional patrols, and then we put a light camera trailer apparatus up on Franklin, and again, just in a way to support neighborhoods with that additional piece of technology. And then we have burglaries. We are in prime time for people to go on vacation. So we do offer a service at the precinct through the CPS. If you guys are going to go on vacation, please let either Jennifer Wiseman or Ahmed Hassan, our two CPSs, know, and we can do some additional patrols by your house. They also suggest if you have the Alexa, to set your Alexas to say, okay, I'm going to turn this light on for this time, or this light on in this time in this room, so it kind of looks like you're at home, even though you're not at home. So, different ideas that we have, from using your Alexas and the additional patrols. Next slide. All right, so this is something that CPS Wiseman put together for your neighborhood. So we'll kind of continue going. Next slide, thank you. And I realized you're not going to be able to see this, so I'm so sorry. Overall trends are trending down. What we are seeing, you can go to the next one. I'm sorry. It's each neighborhood and it's the same. But here's the neat thing. All of this is taken from the MPD crime dashboard. So if you just Google MPD crime dashboard, this will come up. It's kind of fun. It can kind of lose yourself in some time with this. And you can set the parameters with neighborhoods, timeframes, wards, precincts. I mean, however you want to do it on the dashboard. Like I said, time frame, violent crime, property crime. So this is where all of this is taken, and I'm so sorry that it doesn't show up very well at all. But what we have seen primarily are the robberies, unfortunately, auto thefts, and theft from motor vehicle. I'd like to touch on auto theft and theft from motor vehicle. Auto thefts, please do not leave your car running unattended. That is a direct invitation for somebody to take your car. With that being said, please do not leave objects inside your car. Laptop bags, gym clothes, whatever. You might know it's your dirty, sweaty gym clothes, but somebody that doesn't know what's in that bag might think it's a laptop and they'll take it. And that's not cool. So, these things are things that these little things that we can do as good citizens, as good neighbors to not let this happen. So it's just a good reminder, either take it inside with you or just put it in the trunk so your car does not look very exciting, and it's of course not running unattended. And some of that is like food delivery people, we do see that with them a lot. And we continue to message to them, please, please, please don't be doing that. It's not good habits. So I think the next slide might be a little more of the same on that one. Okay, so we're done. So does anybody have any questions on that? And like I said, all of that is on the crime dashboard. Again, you can just Google that. So okay. When we see crimes happening, what should we do? My husband says, do not engage, but I cannot just stand by and watch. What advice do you suggest? Okay, this is a great question. If you see a crime happening, what should you do? Go ahead and call 911, especially if you feel your personal safety is at risk. So don't just stand by and watch it. Okay, so when you call 911, or the non-emergency 348-2345, dirty little secret, it gets answered by the same people. So it's okay to call 911, it's okay to call 2345. But what is really helpful, especially with the decreased amount of staffing, is to have a really good description of what you are seeing outside your window. a suspect description. What are they wearing? Is it a guy in dark clothing, or is it a guy wearing a Brett Favre jersey? There is a difference. It really does help being the eyes, and sometimes the ears, to that 911 officer. The more information they get from you, the safer the situation is for the officer to respond to, just because of the greater amount of details that are given. So that's a really good question. So I hope I answered it. And thank you for calling, being a good neighbor. Okay, here we go. When do you anticipate returning to enforcing traffic laws, and how do you plan to do this? The mayor addressed this with technology. I would say a lot of the questions that we get through 311 is complaints about neighborhoods running stop signs. With that, it's usually neighbors that are doing that. But on a serious note, traffic law is important. The cops are busy answering the 911 calls, and when they have time, are able to do the additional kind of, we call it the proactive policing with, the traffic stops, the business checks. So, I get it. So I probably didn't answer that very well, but sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a rideshare driver, and I drive everywhere. And Minnesota State Patrol, when I've had a driver do something very dangerous, they have a program where I can send in the license plate to the State Patrol, and they send a warning to the driver. Does Minneapolis or even St. Paul have anything like that?
St. Paul, I don't know. You would have to check with them, but no, not for us. Oh, I'm sorry. So his question was, he's a rideshare driver, and when he sees something going on, he thinks, or the state patroller has a...
send in the license plate number, and I have videos of what they did, like cutting across lanes, doing 100 miles an hour.
Okay.
And they can't find them, but they can send a letter saying, you were seen doing this. This is just a warning.
Okay, so if they see somebody driving like 100 miles an hour, they can send a thing into the state patrol, and the state patrol can send them a letter saying, somebody saw you being naughty. No, but okay, so that kind of touches a little bit on when you see crimes happening, what should we do? If you're on the freeway and you see somebody driving, like that, just kind of jockeying in and out of traffic, 100 miles an hour, completely dangerous, or in the neighborhoods, call 911, give a description of the vehicle. You may or may not be able to get a plate when it's moving that fast, but you might have seen, a purple Dodge Challenger rolling down the avenue at like 80 miles an hour. They can send that information to all the squads in that precinct, saying, hey, you know what, this person called at such and such time from such and such location and saw this vehicle zooming down the street. It's a purple, it might be just as an overall general safety, a situational awareness, so it is, beneficial. So that's what we have, if that helps.
I've done that.
Okay, well, thank you. So,
What's happening with the tower on Franklin?
what's happening to the
Tower at Franklin and Fremont?
the light?
Camera lights.
Oh, the camera light. Oh, yeah. Okay, what's happening with the camera light on Franklin and Fremont?
Yes, is it being monitored on a consistent basis? I have small children riding bicycles, it's actually hard enough to do that. And you have a car creating around the corner and a child on a bike. That's not a good situation. So you watch cars blow through that stoplight or stop sign constantly. What's happening with the camera?
Okay, so the question is, we've got the camera trailer at Franklin and is Fremont and Fremont.
No, it's Fremont.
I think it's Fremont and Franklin.
Yeah, it's Fremont.
Well, anyhow, it's up there. And the question is, is it consistently being monitored? And, the kids are out riding their bikes in January, which is unique in and of itself. So yes and no. it is monitored when it needs to be monitored. So if something's happening that's emergent, that's occurring, we can look into that camera and see what's going on. But there is not a person sitting behind a computer watching that one, all day like that, no. So, but if something is happening, it is a way to capture some information, whether it's a person description, a vehicle, a direction of travel, that is occurring. And that was put there to help support the neighborhood with understanding who's coming, who's, just in case somebody's coming in, because we had that slide up there with the purse robberies, to capture any information, possible information of suspects coming in or going up. There was a question over here.
About if we see something on one of the interstates, should we call 911 or should we call Highway Patrol?
Okay, well, the question is if you see something happening on an interstate, should you call 911 or the Highway Patrol? Another dirty little secret is your 911 call does go to the Highway Patrol. So, and they're really kind of, we talked about technology, they're pretty fancy down there, where they can send calls over to an agency. And in my mind, I think of it like, when you watch old TVs and you see the woman behind the switchboard doing this, it's kind of a little bit similar, but without the cranks, it's more of a push of a button where they can kind of put different communication agencies together on one radio. I really explained that terribly, but it's really cool how they can do that. So to answer your question, when you call 911 on the freeway, it does go to the State Patrol. You guys asked really good questions. Yes?
Are Minneapolis police officers required to live in the city of Minneapolis? If not, why not? And if not, what percentage of officers actually do live in the city of Minneapolis?
Okay, the question is, are Minneapolis police officers required to live in the city of Minneapolis? It's about a three-pronged question, so I'm going to start with the first one. No. If you remember Governor Ventura, back when he became governor, we were required to, so when I was hired, I was required to. And then he signed some legislature and eliminated that piece. How many do and how many don't, I don't know. I just ask that all of our officers continue to keep their emergency contact information up to date. But I know there are some that do, and some that don't. I think it's a personal choice of where you live. And some people, enjoy having a very short commute. Some people want a little bit of space between work and going home. Way in the back.
Yes. Do you have plans for the car racing that happens down Hennepin Avenue in the summer mostly?
Yeah, okay. So the question is about the drag racing, the car racing, the speed racers on Hennepin in the summer. Yes, we do. I will have to look at last year's plan. I can tell you what we did on the east side, because that is where I was on the east side, is we talked about putting the steel plates in streets. Usually you see those when they do like utility work, but we're like, wait a minute. This is a great deterrent to the people doing the burnouts. So there's just a lot of things on the table that we can talk about with that. There is a task force that Minneapolis is part of with other agencies. I think they meet at the Fridley Police Department for that detail. And we do have a couple officers assigned to that to combat that. With a lot of that information, they're able to get through social media to see, who's meeting up whom at where. So we do have a task force on that. So okay. Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you, Officer Davis. I'm saved.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. So I worked in Minneapolis since 2020. Spent a few years in 5th Precinct, in relation to like the street racers, what we did was we worked with a lot of like agency partners. Like whenever we'd have information come out, we worked with community members, we'd lock in parking lots. West end of Lake the Isles, we put barricades with street department, stuff like that. A lot of times we'd get as many plates as we could, get license plate readers, so that helps a lot. We associate them in like police reports. We can look into our records, if there's associated vehicles, we send it over to State Patrol, we put out task alerts, we go right to the house at times, pick up the car right in the driveway if we have different crimes. We pull a lot of guns off people, specifically with the gun investigation unit in relation to those investigations. I hope that kind of answers the question. We were pretty aggressive about it when we were down here in Pittsburgh, so at least my team was.
Okay. I think my time is done, and I'm going to turn it over to Park Police Chief Jason Ohotto.
We have the park police here with us. We have the chief, and we have Lieutenant Klein. And then Eileen Johnson is going to introduce why we're wearing orange shirts, and then we are going to open it up to questions to Katie Cashman at the end from the audience. Okay? So stick around. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Ohotto. I have the honor and privilege of serving the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board as its police chief. I've been in that role for the last 11 years. I see many familiar faces in this room. I've had the opportunity to work for the Park Police the last 28 years, and I've intersected with many of you in these neighborhoods, particularly around issues at Hidden Beach. We call it East Cedar Beach now. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see so many familiar faces in the crowd. I want to acknowledge a couple people first off. If the superintendent could stand up, please. Superintendent Al Bangor is here. I also want to acknowledge Lori Spark, who is the recreation supervisor for Kenwood Park. On behalf of Lori, welcome to Kenwood. And Leslie Vincent, where are you? Leslie, if you want to come on up here with me. Leslie's my partner. Leslie's the Park Board's Director of Community Connections and Violence Prevention, and her department is tasked with being the first point of contact around responses to unsheltered homelessness. So I'm going to ask Leslie to talk briefly about that in just a second. We're down to about a half an hour left in this meeting, and as you know, we've got a lot left on the agenda, so I'm going to try to be brief. In summary, during 2023, violent crime across the park system remained pretty flat. However, property crime was down about 25%. The parks in your neighborhoods primarily experience property crimes. There are very few incidents of serious violent crimes in the parks in these neighborhoods. Most of the property crimes that occur, as Inspector Nelson mentioned, are car break-ins. Car break-ins at Parade Stadium, car break-ins along Cedar Lake, and car break-ins around Lake of the Isles. Very often these are crimes of opportunity where people drive to the lakes or go to the parade to participate in some sort of athletic event. They leave property, purses, briefcases, bags in their cars as they go for a run, or they go to play softball, or they go to skate at the ice garden. And thieves move very quickly. They break in, they take those bags, and they get on 394 and 94 and leave the city immediately. What they're after is credit cards. They go to retail outlets and they'll run the credit card until the credit card doesn't work anymore. So my crime prevention tip for everyone in this room is, do not leave credit cards in your car while you visit our regional parks. Parks are the center of our neighborhoods. In fact, that's in large part why we are meeting here tonight. There are 185 parks across the city, and we work really hard to make sure that we prioritize safety. Safety isn't just the job of our park police officers. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board takes a multifunctional approach to safety. That's why Leslie's standing with me today. We work closely with our operations folks. We work closely with our recreation partners. But I want to say we work very closely with community. Positive community activity within parks displaces negative activity. So Eileen Johnson's going to talk to you here in a little bit. I know Eileen pretty well. We've worked really closely together with the neighborhood walking group at Loring Park. I think Councilmember Cashman asked me to touch on Loring Park. So Loring Park was the perennial #1 park for violent crime in the park system for my entire career here, up until about 3 years ago. And when I had the opportunity to meet Eileen and work with Park Commissioner Elizabeth Schaefer and begin engaging neighborhood stakeholders around the park, really trying to inspire people to feel ownership over that space, we were able to start turning things around. And last year, Loring Park wasn't even close to being in the top tier of violent crime parks within the city of Minneapolis. Many people have talked to you tonight about the staffing challenges and crisis that are facing police agencies. The park police is not immune to that staffing challenge. We're down a number of officers as well. When we are in these challenging times, we need to rely on partners, not only other police agencies, but our public servants who work in the parks and our residents. Safety is paramount to the folks who live in this city. I recognize that. In Minneapolis, we're really proud to say that all of our residents are within about a 10-minute walk of park space. We're proud of that geographic access. That geographic access only matters, though, if people feel safe to go to those spaces. So we work really hard day in and day out across the park system to make sure that we're making parks safe places for people to come, visit, recreate, participate in all of the different programs we have to offer. Finally, I will say that when I hear from residents around issues of safety and perceptions of safety, most of the time it's not about violent crime. Certainly we encounter violent crime, there are incidents of violent crime that take place in the park system. I will say it's typically under 100 incidents over the course of a year across 185 parks, which is not a very high number when you look at the density of our city. But there are incidents that happen. People most often complain, though, about antisocial behavior, livability issues, people who wind up in public space that are using drugs or intoxicated with alcohol, people who are experiencing mental health crisis, people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. These are societal issues that our community and our city are not fully prepared to deal with. This is not just a law enforcement solution. This has to be a solution that policymakers take on, and we need to be able to find effective ways to engage those members of our community. And we're not quite there yet. So with that, I'm going to ask Leslie Benson to talk a little bit about the Park Board's response when all of you report seeing an encampment or experience somebody who may be unsheltered within the park system.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Benson, and so I am the director, as Jason mentioned, as Chief Ohotto mentioned, of our Community Safety and Violence Prevention Department. So what our department does is that we focus on safety strategies, intervention, and de-escalation with our park patrons and our community members. And we do that in multiple different ways. So one of the things I want to talk about is our programming and our strategies is intentional. So I invited Abdi. Abdi works alongside our team as our community connector, and he's going to talk about some of the strategies we do around our encampment work, our connected resources, and some of our other youth violence prevention initiatives.
Good evening. My name is Abdi Mukhtar. I am a community coordinator. So my work surrounds attending a lot of safety meetings. But also we have action team, we have street outreach team that respond to youth violence prevention, community safety meetings, encampments. If you report an encampment through 311 or if you call 911, if our park police will not able to respond to that, it comes to us. A lot of the work that we do is relationship building. We attend a lot of safety meetings, but most of us also have youth work background. So we work with young people, we live in the neighborhood, we work with the community. So when we come to safety meetings, when we're out there responding, we really collaborate with neighborhood organizations, residents, and with park police. We also know that when it comes to young people and youth violence prevention, between 3 to 8 is when young people need to be engaged. That's why our recreation centers are open. That's why our coach and activities, our buildings are open. That's why, because of what is happening now, we are building new technology centers where young people can hang out, improving our facilities and recruiting volunteers and coaches. We understand it takes a village to work with our youth, and that's why a lot of times we recruit volunteers. And sometimes residents like you, sometimes the volunteers that we need to also help us with that. Within our work, when we attend safety meetings, we listen. If it's park board related, we closely work with our park police, but also the recreation center in their neighborhood. We try to address those issues, and we are very committed. We have very committed and passionate staff at the park board, and we really understand that our parks will make this city a beautiful city, but at the same time, it's very challenging because we cannot be every location at the same time. We do have limited staff, but when we receive emails, weekly or monthly, I attend 4 to 5 safety meetings in different neighborhoods in the city of Minneapolis. That goes back to Leslie, that goes back to the note to go to the chief and our superintendent and the leadership. We do have Nicole who directs our recreation staff. So we work collaboratively, and we are happy to be here, but also we appreciate your commitment and working with us and supporting our beautiful parks. So thank you.
I got one question card. And the question card is about kids jumping off the bridge at the Kenwood Channel between Lake of the Isles and the Damacosta. And the question is, do the park police enforce that rule? And I will say that this has been a problem as long as that bridge has existed, and certainly my 28 years with the park police. We do some enforcement, particularly around complaints. However, in the summer, our staff is extremely busy. We prioritize our work, and we prioritize it based on trying to intervene and prevent violence and people being victims of crimes. That's not to say that this isn't a legitimate safety concern. I think what I'm going to do is probably work with the superintendent and see if we can get an operations solution to make it less appealing or less likely that young people can jump off that bridge. I think with that, I'm done. Eileen Johnson, come on down.
Hello, everyone. I have to talk about food, right? Okay, I do have a soft voice, so I'm just going to do my level best. My name is Eileen Johnson. Thank you for having me here tonight. Before I explain what the orange t-shirts mean, I would like all of our safety walkers, our neighborhood safety walkers, to stand up, and I would like everyone to thank them with their applause. safety walkers that we have walking in now 11 groups across Minneapolis. I want to announce to you, before I talk about our organization, and I'll do that I'll only take 2 minutes, but I do want to tell you that the Kenwood group begins walking on Thursday, February 8th at 5:30 p.m., meeting at the playground.
Kenwood School Playground.
Kenwood
School
School
Playground, not Park Playground.
So the walkers for that will receive a beautiful orange t-shirt with the Kenwood logo on it. So I just will really, and a hat, and a nice hat. Courtesy of Martin Patrick 3 in my neighborhood, North Loop. So no charge at all for that, for your neighborhood t-shirt. I just want to tell you that our safety motto, first of all, we're grassroots. We're not funded, we're self-funded. Our safety model is neighbors, businesses, Minneapolis Police Department, Park Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff, and University of Minnesota Police Department. We are all moving forward together in a spirit of friendship to improve neighborhood safety. So we form a lot of friendships. We do a lot of service in our neighborhoods, whether it is litter pickup, giving directions, providing resources to small businesses so that they can help the homeless. It can be just anything, whatever is needed in that neighborhood on that evening. In my neighborhood, North Loop, we do give a lot of advice to people coming into the neighborhood about locking their cars, taking their keys and fobs. So as much as we are a safety organization, we're also a service organization. Our motto is join us together, we stand for a safer community. And that together, that encompasses all of the entities that I just told you about, neighbors, business, law enforcement. Though I just want to say one thing. So many people in the safety clubs tell me that the primary benefit that they have had from being in the safety club is new friendships. It's sometimes a little bit hard as an adult to make new friendships, and these are perfect places to do that. The other thing that I wanted to say is we are all very different, but yet we have one thing in common. You will find in every single safety walker the idea, the belief that one person can make a difference and that everyone should try. And so these are people who are out there every week in their neighborhoods walking together to try to help and make things better. So if you would like more information, as I said, we have 11 clubs today. We're going to get to 24 in 2024. And in 2025, have one in each neighborhood that would like one. So Julie is over there at the table. She has contact information and the like. And thank you so much.
Interested in the walking club, you can get a hold of me or Marty Carlson, and you'll be getting notice of it in the KNO newsletter. Or just stop me tonight, and I will. I know several people have already expressed an interest, so please join us. It's fun. It's fun. And it's good community building. I believe in the power of community. So now we've been asked, a lot of people didn't know we were writing questions on cards and then handing them to our speakers. So Katie Cashman has been asked to come back up so she can take some questions a couple questions from the audience. So here she is.
All right, I'll do my very best to answer your questions. Yes?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming back and taking questions. I think we changed the format. My question is about Minneapolis police funding, but I want to ask it very specifically. So there's been discussion about working across the various agencies and coordinating some new safety initiatives. All of that makes a lot of sense to me. It sounds like it's well underway. So my question to you is if Chief Ohotto and Mayor Frey come back to the council and ask again for a pay raise and recruiting resources. Will you support?
Okay, so the question is if Chief O'Hara and Mayor Frey come back to the council with another proposal for retention bonuses and recruitment bonuses, would I support it? So I believe what happened at the end of last year was about $17 million from a $19 million state budget for public safety that was put on the table. And I believe what happened is that the council moved it into the general budget instead of it being in HR funding. So I believe that there is a question of how that funding can be spent from the budget, and I think many council members that I've talked to are interested in entertaining a bonus as long as it fits within the Department of Justice guidelines for what successful recruitment and retention bonuses look like. So what I read in the Department of Justice report was that a successful model is one where individual officers recruit a friend or a colleague from someone else to join their police force, and after that officer stays within the force for a number of years, the original officer who recruited that other officer receives a bonus. That's one of the examples of retention bonus that the Department of Justice report said is successful. So yes. Yes, please.
That's a MPD
Yeah.
is ranked as 18 to 21 departments lower than others in the Twin Cities. How can we possibly recruit officers if MPD is paid less than 18 to 21? The level of compensation for every department around the Twin Cities, and we match that, and then we have 10%.
So the question is, I think the comment in this case is that other police jurisdictions around the metro area, the police officers make much more than Minneapolis police officers, so how can we expect officers to want to work here? And that's something that I was just talking to Assistant Chief about when we were sitting up here as well. How do we compare? And that's what she told me is that she hopes that an attractive salary will be put forward in the police contract negotiations that we sign as a city once those negotiations are complete. Any other questions? Yes.
I guess I'm not understanding what your answer was to the previous question about the supporting of the bonuses. We've heard a discussion of like a long-term sort of referral fee. I guess what I'm wondering is where you stand on bonuses for police officers and for pay raises, because frankly, I'm joined by many of my neighbors and find it appalling that our police officers have not been given appropriate pay raises or salaries.
Yeah, I think the question stands whether I would support police retention and recruitment bonuses, and my answer is that yes, I would if the data supported them, and that's one of the cases that I think the data supports. And you know, as a new council member who's been here 3 weeks, I was not part of those conversations back in December. So when it comes back to the council, I'll be engaging in them once again. And then I think as far as attractive salaries for police officers, that, you know, that is an ongoing conversation in the police union contract that I'm not part of. So my role in that is approving the city contract with NPD once that comes to the council in the next couple months.
Well, actually, the city council did turn down Chief O'Hara and Mayor Frey's request to use funds that had been allocated from the state of Minnesota for pay raises and recruiting bonuses. The city council voted it down. That is our specific issue. So we're asking you, what side of that issue would you be? If they come back with a specific request for competitive pay raises and recruiting bonus dollars, will you support it?
Likely, yes. Yes, I'm just answering that.
Likely? What does that mean?
If the data supports it, that's the whole answer.
if the data supports it, there's also.
Like data, where's this data coming
If
from?
you don't understand why you're making it now, can you just explain that?
Where's the
All right, we
data?
have another question here in the back.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're doing your job and it's getting repeated. It's very clear from your responses tonight that you haven't examined all the issues. What I'm curious about is why did you find the Israel-Gaza motion so imperative that you had to vote affirmatively as opposed to supporting Representative Councilwoman Palmisano's efforts to reach a more mediated settlement? I understand that you wish to address the Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, but what I will tell you, somebody who represents a lot of Jewish people in the city, that your vote was felt as very anti-Semitic and also uninformed about the history of the conflict in the Middle East.
I'll answer this question by saying that the resolution
That
came
is not the
forward.
city council's business.
So the resolution came forward from a broad coalition of community members who wrote the resolution, and it was an effort to show solidarity with communities that are impacted by the war and to stand for a position that we do not want our tax dollars being spent on bombs. It's a message to our governor, to our senators,
It
and
doesn't answer the question as to why you didn't allow wartime, as Representative Palmisano suggested, because what it means to you is it may be a broad coalition, but it is not reflective of how the city feels as a whole or your ward. So the question is, why did you not give Palmisano enough? Yes, there's a diversity of opinion.
there are.
But what you're doing is divisive.
I believe that this was a unified vote from 9 members of the council who voted on the resolution, including myself. I'm proud of my vote. I heard from probably 500 community members, specifically about the ceasefire resolution, both for and against. And I would say it's about 50-50 in terms of how people reacted to that. And I believe that the
So why
vote.
would you take a position so strongly and half of your ward feels differently?
So we're going to be mindful of time. We're going to take 2 more questions. Please allow Katie to answer the questions. We'll take 2 more after that, and then we'll be wrapping up the meeting.
Please go ahead.
I would like to say thank you. As a Palestinian American, I have been silenced time and time again. I have been told I am not Palestinian, that I cannot use that word. And then every time I use it, I am called anti-Semitic. I am thankful tonight that I have a city that actually sees me, that hears me, that feels my pain. And I don't mind divisiveness. I work my butt off in this city, in this school, actually, every single day, volunteering my time tutoring kids. I would love, instead, we could talk about what we're going to do with our education system rather than spending our local tax dollars on bombing people over the globe. I would love to see help in this school. I would love to see us talking about teacher retention, teacher bonuses.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take a question in the back.
We have 418,000 residents in Minneapolis, and of that, only 60,000 voted to defund the police. That means a large audience that still wants to keep a police presence. And I think what the audience here is saying today, that as our council member for this board, we really expect you to listen to your constituents. That hasn't been the case with the majority of our council members, who unfortunately don't listen to the majority voice. And there's a large frustration in the city right now because of that. The job of our elected officials is to listen to their constituents and to listen to the majority of what their wards are. Every ward is different, and every ward wants different things. And so that's what we're asking you to do. Thank you.
Yes, this will be the last question.
Okay, boy, after some of the intense stuff, mine's going to sound really pity. But, okay, as a rideshare driver, last year, I won't talk about St. Paul, which was even worse than Minneapolis. I stopped driving in St. Paul and Minneapolis during last winter because I noticed, and maybe I should ask the police this, cars that were being tagged for not being moved because of snow weren't being towed. That created a condition that made it dangerous to rideshare. And as a full-time driver, I felt bad that I couldn't provide service in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Was this a city council issue or a Minneapolis issue that we did not tow cars last year? Will that happen again if we have the same type of snow problems? Because I live in Apple Valley, and it was easy for me to avoid Minneapolis and St. Paul. I just felt bad doing it because I care about people who are roads.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. The question is about whose responsibility is it to tow vehicles that are on a snow emergency
No
route?
one did last year, and it made things impassable.
I will say, I wasn't on the council last year, but I am doing a walk tomorrow with another resident who is concerned about snow emergency routes in West Waukesha. That's another neighborhood that comes up a lot because of the density, the tightness of the street and the one-way. So my office and I are really prepared for the snow of this season. So those are some of the concerns that I'm happy to hear on this issue. Maybe Inspector can answer that.
Thank you for the question on snow emergency. I think right now we're in a no snow emergency. So snow emergency is a voluntary thing, and the thing, as we all know, it's a very spontaneous thing that happens. I mean, you hear the forecast, and then you try to get these officers to come in and work snow emergency, then they are given the route. So we apologize that there was a route that didn't have adequate towing for you. We do our best. There was an incredible, I felt that winter just got over from last year. It was so rainy. So, we'll do our best this year if we ever get a snow emergency, but it's not looking like that, looking at the next forecast. So, thank you folks for coming in.